Hey, for those of you that don't know, my name is Mark. Uh, when Zach asked me if I would come and share with the high school group, he said we need an older voice. I wasn't sure if I was offended by that or what, but I guess I'm the older voice that gets to come and share occasionally with you guys. And just so you kind of know how old that voice is, I've been married 42 years. I've got 3 daughters. I've got 5 grandkids, and I'm still breathing. So that's pretty amazing out there, I guess. So we're going to start this new topic of thicker than water. Have you guys heard that phrase before? What's thicker than water? Blood. Whose blood? Our family's blood. Yeah, so there's this idea that what happens with our family, we behave a little bit differently with family than we do with everybody else. And as we look tonight into the scripture, we're going to see that family can be just a little bit more than just our blood relations. But for most of us in the season of life that we're in, we're dealing with family more than anything else in our context. And so I want to throw some just slides up here real quick just so we can talk about family. Yeah, my family's full of nuts, okay? Now, for some of you, you're not laughing because you may be the nut, okay? Yes, I got no control over that. Next, yeah, when your family puts the fun in dysfunctional. Any dysfunctional families in the room, or anybody willing to admit it? Yeah, probably all dysfunctional at some level. Next. Yeah, every family has one. I don't know why I love this one so much, but next. Yeah, I'm glad to be the black sheep of the family. Imagine how boring it would be without me. Now, I was the black sheep of my family. I grew out of it at some point in time, and my hair went gray, so I was no longer the black sheep of the family. So I have 3 daughters, and sometimes I cheer, sometimes I don't. The baby of the 3 came along 9 and 11 years after her older sisters. And at some point in time, about high school, our middle daughter realized she was a middle daughter and started acting that way, kind of stuff. And so, that it was a traumatic thing. To this day, she says we ruined her life by having another girl. Okay, so anyway, next. Now, I don't know if you can see that they're giving the thumbs up. Mom sticks her head around the corner. I was an only child, so the only person I fought with in my house was my mother. So, and, yeah. My family adds me to a group text. I have my middle daughter again. When there is a family group text, she just goes right through the roof. She says, I have told you, do not put me on family group text. I don't want to live in your drama. And so the first thing I do when something comes up is I put her on a group text because I lived with her drama, and it's my way of getting back. So that phrase, blood is thicker than water, the reality is that physiologically, that's not true. It's not true that blood is thicker than water. However, emotionally, it may be somewhat accurate. Because with our family, I think we've all got to that place in our lives that we experience. Sometimes we'll give our family a pass when we wouldn't give anybody else a pass. And sometimes we're harder on our family than we would be anybody else. Our friends might do something to us, but if our brother or sister does it, it's World War III kind of stuff. And so that blood is thicker than water thing kind of works both directions. Sometimes it works positively, and sometimes it doesn't. But when it comes to your family, the family dynamic, there's a lot of things that go into it. I've already talked about the fact I had 3 girls. Gender is a part of that. Your birth order, my middle daughter with her middle daughter syndrome plays a part in that. Your family culture, you were born into a culture that will continue to shape you in some form or fashion. And then it's all those things about your family. It's socioeconomics, it's finances, it's where we live, it's who we associate with, it's where we take our vacations. It's all those things that play a part of who our family is, but then becomes a part of how we define ourselves. And that interaction that we have with them. And then kind of one final thing is faith. You're all here tonight, whether you have a faith of your own or not, or your friend brought you or your family encouraged you to come or maybe forced you to come. You're here in a place of faith, and so faith plays a part in it. But my wife and I do a lot of marriage coaching for Victory, and a lot of times we'll be called into a situation where there is faith in part of the family and not in the other, and helping couples to kind of navigate what that looks like. And sometimes that happens with us too. This weekend, my mom's youngest sibling was in town, and we met, and he is only 8 months older than I am. So my uncle's 8 months older than I am. And he just had this issue where his faith is a little bit odd to me. He grew up as a Christian. He became, and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but he converted to Catholicism from like a church like Victory. And then he became a Buddhist. Now he's a Buddhist Catholic. And he and I having a conversation is like me banging my head against the wall, because he explains his faith to me, and I'm like, could you run that by me just one more time? And he gets frustrated because I don't understand how he's sorted all these things out. But faith plays a part in that. And when it's not our faith, we recognize that whole faith thing is playing a part in our dynamic. Now, for some of us, as we're wrestling with faith in our own lives or in our family, we may see that family is one issue and faith is another. And one of them's kind of over here, and we operate in this realm, and then we slipped over here and we kind of operate in this faith realm for a while. I was a pastor of a church in Indianapolis for 25 years, and we built a large building several years ago that had a second floor, and we weren't using the second floor right away. And so we would go up on Sunday mornings and we could look out over the parking lot and see families come to church, and you could actually see them fighting in their cars as they came into the parking lot. And then they would, you could see one of the parents point, everybody take a deep breath, they get out of the car and they put on a smile and they'd walk into church, hand in hand, kind of stuff. And so we struggle with that sometimes, is where does my faith intersect with my family and vice versa? So our text tonight comes from an encounter between Jesus and his family of choice. Not his blood relations, but it was his family of choice. It was the people that he chose to do life with for the last 3 years of his life. And so we're going to be looking at John chapter 13. And I'll go ahead and read from the page here just because my version is a little bit different than yours. John 13, verse 1, it says, it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in this world, he loved them to the end. So this verse begins to describe the love that Jesus had for the people that had been with him, and day in, day out, done meals together, traveled together, done ministry together, faced opposition together, had fun together, and they had become his family of choice. And it describes the love that he has for them. And then we skip to verses 3 and 4. It said, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, that he had come from the Father and was returning to God. So he got up from his meal and he took off his outer clothing and he wrapped a towel around his waist. Now, this is something in the culture that this happened in that could be somewhat lost on us. Well, maybe not. I mean, the idea of us getting up from the supper table and going over and, putting a robe on and washing everybody's feet at the table is probably a little foreign to most of us. I don't know if it happens at your house at Thanksgiving. It doesn't happen at mine, kind of stuff. But even in Jesus' culture, it was an inappropriate behavior on his part. Everybody would have been somewhat shocked that Jesus would have done that. And it would cause even his closest friends to kind of pull back from that behavior. But that's what Jesus did. In verse 5 it says, and after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. Now, this was an act of servitude in culture. Okay, it was something that the servants would do in the wealthier households for the guests as they reclined around the tables. Because in Jesus' day and age, when people ate, they ate reclining at the table. So your feet went one direction or the other down the table. And so it became somewhat important to enjoy the meal that the people next to you got their feet washed. You understand that? How that would work? I mean, just think about it. When you guys take off your socks, throw it around the room and think about eating, okay, during that time. So they would wash their feet. But Jesus became the servant in that thing. But not just for servitude. He did it as an expression of his love. So he served them as an expression of his love. And then skipping to verses 34 and 35, at the end of that chapter, he says, "A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples if you love one another." Now, I have a really good friend that says this all the time. If it's repeated, it's important. What's repeated in these verses multiple times? What phrase is repeated multiple times? Love what? Love one another. Yeah, love one another. Love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone you'll know you're my disciples if you love one another. He's saying, people will know that you're a follower of Christ. They will know that you're a Christian by the way you treat your family. By the way you treat your family, they will know that you are a person of faith. And so there's this challenge upon us that everybody that's in relationship with us, whether it's our family by blood or our family by choice, those friends that we invite into our life to become a part of our inner circle, as Christians, we have a responsibility to show love to them, not just because we love them and because they love us, but because the world around us is watching. So Jesus says, they'll know you're my disciples by the way you treat one another, by the way you love one another. Now, as we go in and we'll skip to the end of the story in our minds, what we know is that Jesus' friends were going to abandon him. Some of them were going to betray him. Some of them were going to deny him. Some of them weren't going to be present in his moment of need. And yet he still washed their feet. He still demonstrated to them that act of love. He didn't show them love because of who they were or what they did. He showed them love because of who he was. And that becomes somewhat of the challenge for us as we move through life, is to recognize that it's not a transactional relationship. I don't love my family, or I'm not kind to my family, or I don't do things for my family because they do something for me. I do things. I'm kind. I show love because that's who I am. I don't show my friends and the people around me that I love them because they've shown their love to me. As a believer, I show them love. I'm kind to them. I demonstrate to them because of who I am, because of what God has done for me. So Scripture teaches us that we'll know we're followers of Jesus. People will know we're a child of God in one simple way: by how we love one another. And love is demonstrative. You know, in this context, Jesus showed us that love wasn't an emotion. Love was a behavior. It was an action. It was doing something for someone else that had value. Again, not because of who they were, but because of who I am. In 1 Corinthians chapter 14, we have what's oftentimes referred to as the love chapter. You'll hear it at weddings all the time. It has nothing to do with weddings. It has to do with being a believer. In 1 Corinthians 3:4-7, it says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres." And so we get these 14 descriptions in there of what love is. And if you guys would bring up that next slide real quick, please. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to grab some pens. I think there's some somewhere. Maybe. Oh, Zach has them. And come up here and grab one of these cards real quick, because I'm going to ask you to write something on these cards. Okay, everybody got something written down on their card? Okay, and again, you get done here, you get into your groups, get into a conversation, you want to change it, that's okay. But just for this moment in time, everybody should have written on their cards something that they believe from this list, this description of Christian love, if it was more present in your family, it would have the greatest impact. Now, here's what I want to ask you. Using the model of what Jesus did with his disciples, where he got up from the table and he washed their feet, and he demonstrated to them what perfect love was, not because of who they were, but because of who he was. What would it look like for you to bring that's on your card into your family? Not expected of them. What would it look like if you were the one who brought what was missing from your family in there for you? Okay? And that's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that out loud. You might get into your groups and want to talk about it. But what would it look like if you determine that as a follower of Christ, I'm going to do what's within my power to bring this expression of love into my family, and to challenge you that way, to allow your faith in Jesus to shape the way you love the people you live with, your family.